Led Zeppelin conquered the world in the 70s, really by the early 70s. They also inspired two sisters who by the mid-70s proved they could rock as hard as any band in music. Up next, Ann Wilson of Heart shares a few personal stories about Led Zeppelin and her experiences meeting her heroes and how they inspired some of her compositions on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you used to buy albums with your own money as a kid and savored every song on whether it was on cassette or vinyl, this is your channel. Just subscribe below and make sure to click the bell so you never miss out. Also, look us up on Patreon to help us develop more of this content and for more videos. Sisters Ann and Nancy Wilson were really molded by several musical moments in their lives to form the band Heart in the 70s. Ann Wilson has since become one of rock and roll's defining voices for that legendary band that has sold over 35 million records, and they've charted 20 top 40 singles. She's also the only female to front a band that has charted top 10 albums in 4 different decades. I mean, she's paved the way for every girl who has ever dreamed of starting a band. The desire to rock started from watching the Beatles on The Ed Sullivan Show. But instead of wanting the Fab Four like most of her friends did, she wanted to be the Beatles. She wanted to start a band. The die was cast for good, though, when Ann discovered her biggest inspiration, Led Zeppelin. In a recent interview, Ann Wilson was asked what album changed everything for her out of all the albums she'd ever heard. She said, and I quote, "I think it'd be Zeppelin 4. You know, I'd listen to the Beatles and listen to the Stones and Elton John and the other groups that I was listening to in my teens, but that album really hit me where I lived. I know it had a lot to do with Robert Plant's lyrics. I mean, that's my favorite part of the gig is getting to sing those words, our words, Zeppelin's words, whoever. It's just getting to recreate the poetry in song. And that's the album when he really started to write in a more masterly way." She would also add, and I quote, "I knew from the first that I had to reproduce that. This is a teaching album, I said to myself." End of quote. It's been a fire starter for the band since the very beginning. You know, in the long-ranging interview that I did with Ann Wilson some time ago, she talked about Led Zeppelin throughout, how they inspired some of Heart's compositions, including Dream of Archer. She was able to meet her heroes and even work with John Paul Jones in the 90s as he produced the live Heart album, The Road Home, which she talks about. And of course, who can forget the beautiful experience where she and Nancy were able to pay tribute to them at the Kennedy Center Honors years ago with their perfect rendition of Stairway to Heaven. We put together those moments of her talking about Zeppelin from the interview in this special episode of Professor of Rock. You won't want to miss it. Here is Ann Wilson, the air raid siren of popular music, the first lady of rock and roll on the Golden Gods of Rock, Led Zeppelin. As we go into this interview, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. I have 10 pairs of these things, and I love them. Every pair I own have Blocks by Zenni. Now, Blocks protect your eyes against harmful UV and blue light that we all encounter from time to time, and we deal with it really every day when we look at our screens. Go to Zenni.com and design your own. You're going to love it. Here's Ann Wilson on Led Zeppelin. What I love about Heart is your balance on those early albums of the hard stuff and also the light acoustic, like from that album, Dream of the Archer. Wake up from your sleep. Love that song. Yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, that's a pretty unashamed tip of the hat to Led Zeppelin, Battle of Evermore.
Mm-hmm.
Peace, embrace the gloom, I walk the night alone.
It was really fun because Nancy and Roger Fisher were both playing mandolins. They were a couple at the time, so they were always together playing mandolins.
Mm-hmm.
Little hippies, in the back of the van, cross-legged playing the mandolin. And it was just as natural as pie for us to come up with a kind of medieval type folk songy epic thing like that. Sylvan song.
While the archer stands, arrow measured.
It's one that you've done live so many times, kind of a staple.
Battle of Evermore, yeah. Definitely. Yeah, Nancy and I can just do that with just 2 guitars. And people love to hear Battle of Evermore.
I mean, yeah.
they don't know what it means. Those who haven't read the Tolkien books, you know, so big back in the 70s, are just like, we don't know what they're saying, but we like it, you know.
I want to talk about in '95 when The Road Home came out. For Heart fans, that was a great moment, because that felt like a return to your roots in a fashion because of the way you did those songs. Not overproduced, it just felt real and organic. Tell me about that.
Well, for a couple of Seattle Led Zeppelin fans and Nancy Wilson,
John Paul Jones.
It was an amazing moment because he produced that. And he actually came to town maybe for a month, and we rehearsed for 3 weeks in this club called the Backstage in Ballard, which is an area of Seattle, you know. John Paul wrote all the string chart, and then I think we had a 12-person section come in, strings. And then we did 5 nights in a row in front of people in this club.
The dog and butterfly.
Of course, you know, that's, for a singer, that's like pretty challenging, because first you rehearse for 3 weeks straight and then you sing for 5 nights straight. When John Paul first came to town, we started going there every night and working with him and everything. And he was such a gentleman and so unassuming, so down to earth. Led Zeppelin stories had to be dragged out of him. He wasn't sitting around going, oh yeah, let me tell you, you know.
Yeah.
Not at all. We would go back to the car after having worked with him and get in the car and go, can you believe it? Can you believe it? You know, I mean, we were such fans, you know. And
just so you know, that's what's happening right now inside here. It may not show that, but it is kind of going on here as well.
Oh, anyway. Well, thank you. But we were really in awe of him as a person and his legacy, and as a musician. I mean, he is such an unsung hero. In Led Zeppelin. Well,
speaking of Automatic for the People, he did the string arrangements on Automatic for the People. It's a huge part of that.
He was also working with the Butthole Surfers right then. And, you know, all these really, really out there other artists. Awesome. And then he said, well, I'm going to go work with Heart. You know? And it worked really well. He's an emotional guy, a very deep spirit. And one night after we did Crazy on You, where he was playing bass, you know, my bass, my Lovemonger bass, I said, here, you know, and he put it the way he liked it, and I haven't changed it since. But after we had played Crazy on You, one night I turned around and there were tears rolling down his face. You know, and he said, how do you do that?
Let me go crazy, crazy on you.
The one who stood next to Robert Plant all those years said this to me, you know. That's the type of experience it was. It was just, oh my God, you know.
Yeah, I'm not worthy.
Yeah, really.
Oh, yeah.
We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
So, no, we had a really astounding experience making that. And,
Back to Avalon on that is one of my favorites.
That's another Nancy Wilson. If you were gonna say, pick an acoustic guitar thing where Nancy really does Nancy, I'd say that'd be one of them.
All that glitters is gold, and she's buying a stairway to hell.
I gotta ask you about Led Zeppelin, about the Kennedy Honors, because that's I mean, my wife and I have watched that on YouTube probably, I don't know, 15 times. You know, Stairway to Heaven. Cool. And I mean, here you are, you're attempting the Gettysburg Address of rock and roll.
I know,
right?
I know.
And you got the president and the first lady sitting there, and you got Led Zeppelin, you know, the golden gods of rock there. And you, with that choir, you blew the roof off the place. And it was one of those moments in music where, I mean, Jimmy Page has got a smile from ear to ear. Robert Plant's tearing up. What did that feel like?
Nancy and I were standing behind the curtain right before we walked on to do it. And Nancy started freaking out, like, I'm really nervous. Her eyes got really big. And so we just looked at each other and went, hold this until after, okay?
Yeah.
Hold this until after the song is over. So then we went out and we did it, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger with the big choir and everything. And I felt really still inside it. At the time, we couldn't see what the Zeppelin guys were doing or feeling or anything. We were too far away. But looking back on it later on YouTube and everything and on TV, we were just like, oh, crap. An amazing, astounding moment for us. But like I said, really still. That's how I liked them.
A piece.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's just incredible. I love how that choir comes in and how you
Yeah.
attack that last part. It's heaven.
And she's buying a stairway to heaven.
Looking back on your life, what accomplishment means the most to you?
The biggest accomplishment for me, and I think Nancy would say the same thing, is just keeping a hold of ourselves. Because the whole thing of, do you have number one hits? Do you not have number one hits? What do you look like? Who are you? What do you sound like? You know, are you popular? Are you relevant? All that stuff can really stir up your mind, stir up your soul. If you can keep a hold of yourself, then I'd say that's an accomplishment.
Kind of adding to that, double A side. We're going to use a record. Let's say that the double A side of your life that you leave to people. What 2 songs would be on that? Because you talk about balance.
Double A side, wow. Thanks a lot. Well, Barracuda would be on one side.
Barracuda.
Of course.
And Dog and Butterfly would be on another.
We see the dog and butterfly.
I want to also recognize the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What the hell took him so long? I think that's what most people feel as well. But
well, I don't know. It's a pretty political process, I think.
especially for women.
Yes, yeah. Well, I wasn't even going to say that, but since
I'll
you
say
did.
it. Hey, I will. Because,
Yeah,
there's a lot of women that are not in there.
They do have a
lot of bands
have a
too.
woman issue. Joan Jett finally gets
Yep.
inducted.
Mm-hmm.
But she is in such a minority. That's not natural.
No.
I don't know what the problem is there. Because as a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, I can tell you firsthand that you don't pitch to get yourself in there.
No.
It's you have to be invited. It's a very strange thing. I think that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has opened up its umbrella to include other types of genre than just rock now. Because Donna Summer is in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just the rock and roll. Or maybe the word rock and roll has just taken on more colors now.
Well, Anne, this has been extraordinary. Thank you so much for taking the time.
It has been, thank you.
Ann Wilson is such a class act. There'll never be another. I love that performance of Stairway to Heaven. I mean, you can tell that every member of Zeppelin are visibly moved, especially Robert Plant. I've read that what touched him most is seeing Jason Bonham playing his dad's parts. Of course, any rock fan knows that Zeppelin drummer John Bonham, the great John Bonham, died in 1980, at just 32. Whereupon his death, it was decided among the remaining members that Led Zeppelin would not continue on as a band without him, without that magic. That night was special as you kind of had a sense that Jason Bonham became the absolute embodiment of his late father. I mean, his resemblance to his dad it's just eerie. The beard, the bulky frame, wearing the trademark hat, the bombastic playing style. Having Jason participate in that climactic number of the evening was just an inspired choice for Ann and Nancy Wilson to make. Zeppelin inspired Heart, and now Heart has inspired so many other countless artists. That's what great music does. leave us a comment about Ann Wilson, about Heart, and about Led Zeppelin. Give us your take on that legendary performance and the inspiration of these two great bands. If you like our content, we do invite you to be part of our channel by subscribing below. Please do that now. To get Heart's merch or albums, click on our links below. Check us out on Patreon as well for even more videos and to become a curator of this channel. Help us keep the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Stay safe out there. Stay hungry.